He should have died on the battlefield. That was the agreement. Lieutenant Commander Mason Reeve had signed up for a suicide mission, knowing Earth needed a symbol someone who would burn bright before vanishing. Instead, he woke up in silk blue, light with strange hands caressing his chest, warm and luminous, like starlight that had learned to touch. The air smelled like honeyed frost and ozone. His lungs pulled it in greedily. Something moved beside him. Not a machine, not a weapon, a being. Her skin shimmered like polished pearl under low stasis light. Not human, not quite. She had 4 fingers tipped in soft glow, long limbs folded, like poetry, and silver veins running like calligraphy over smooth lavender skin. A translucent veil floated behind her head like gossamer hair suspended in 0G, and her eyes held more gravity than Earth's core. "You live," she whispered, voice like music pulled from the throat of the cosmos. "They said you wouldn't. That humans shattered from the inside when pulled from death. Where am one?" Mason rasped. "Sanctuary, orbiting the Veil constellation. You were retrieved after your vessel disintegrated. I was supposed to die," he murmured. "That explosion was a sacrifice," she finished, gently placing 2 fingers over his lips. "Your people chose destruction to end a cycle of war. That act changed us." She leaned close enough that the warmth from her body made his skin react despite the neural shock. "You bled for peace. We do not take that lightly. I am called Selenia." Selenia, the name curled around his brain like liquid metal, searing itself into memory. "What are you? A caretaker, an Alarian nurse," she said, tilting her head. "You call my kind alien, but I have studied humans, especially your stories. This," she gestured to his body, "this is my duty and my choice." She reached for something beside the bed, a vial, not injected, not forced. She poured it into her palm and pressed her glowing hand against his sternum. The heat was intimate, penetrating. The pain faded, but in its place came something else, a strange, tingling hunger, like longing made physical. His breath hitched. "What was that?" "Cellular nourishment," she replied, voice low and coaxing. "But only the first layer. Human restoration is layered. You require touch, connection, intimacy." His heart thundered like a war drum. "This is alien nurse erotica, isn't it?" he muttered with a half laugh. Pain-shadowed, so Lenya. Smiled, truly smiled, and the station's light bent toward her as if shyly flirting. A human joke. "But, yes, this is healing. And your body agrees." She climbed onto the edge of his berth, movements fluid, respectful but deliberate, not dominant, not submissive, a perfect inversion of their species' roles in this war. This was power reversal romance incarnate, and he was too stunned and too weak to stop it. But he didn't want to. "You shouldn't be here, Mason," whispered, even as his hand rose trembling to touch her cheek. "No," she said, "but I am, and so are you. And if the universe is wise enough to birth intergalactic love stories in the ruins of battle, perhaps we are not enemies." His fingers curled around hers, grounding in the impossible. "Why would you save me?" Her answer wasn't in words, but in the way she leaned forward, letting her forehead brush his. "Because your light reached us before your weapons did." He blinked. "What?" She pulled back only slightly, her voice trembling now. "The final transmission your ship sent. It wasn't coordinates. It was music. Beethoven and a child's drawing. Of Earth, of peace we didn't understand." at first. Then we saw the explosion was deliberate. You gave your lives to stop a war. That is sacred. Mason's throat closed. We thought you'd never listen, and we didn't, until your silence said more than your screams. The warmth between them turned molten. Selenia pressed her palm to his chest, again, but this time lower, slower. Let me give something back, she whispered, not as a nurse, as a woman who feels what your people dared to feel. Hope. Mason closed his eyes. Let her touch the scars. Let her feed the ache. And somewhere in the star-soaked stillness of that sanctuary, a new kind of war began. One fought, not with blades, but with breath and fingers and the bravery to trust it. Was the beginning of a different kind of HFY Sci-Fi Erotica story. Not conquest, not escape, but healing. And the most dangerous thing of all, love. Mason had always believed in the utility of pain. As a soldier, it kept you alert, alive, real. But now, lying beneath the careful touch of Selenia's shimmering hands, he was forced to confront something far more dangerous than pain-pleasure, and the terrifying hunger for it. Each time her skin met his, he healed not just physically, but in pieces he didn't know were broken. Her touch wasn't invasive. It asked permission without words and received it in the way his breath deepened, the way his muscles stopped flinching at contact. I don't understand, Mason murmured as her hands traced the curve of his abdomen, spreading that glowing salve again. Why me? I was just the bait. The sacrifice. That's exactly why, Selenia said, her voice thick with emotion. Because in choosing to burn, you illuminated something we couldn't see. We thought humans were chaos wrapped in flesh. But your species, you love with defiance. He watched her, fascinated, and your kind, we are taught efficiency. Serenity, need, is not our way. But now, I wonder what have we missed. She leaned closer, and he felt it that microsecond of hesitation, a ripple of vulnerability across her perfect exterior. That was when Mason reached up and touched her first, brushing his thumb across the glow along her collarbone. Don't just heal me, he said softly. Let me learn you, too. Selenia trembled. You're not strong enough. Try me, he whispered. And it was both challenge and invitation. She inhaled an unfamiliar human gesture she must have learned from watching him. Then her body slowly unfolded above his, like a nebula taking shape. The veil behind her head shifted with invisible current, forming a crown of trailing energy. She wasn't bound by gravity here. She floated inches above him, every inch of her. A glow, but nothing about her felt untouchable. She pressed her palms to either side of his face. Let me show you what nourishment means to my kind. A pulse of energy flowed from her hands to his temples, down his spine, through every nerve. But what bloomed next wasn't medical, it was emotional. He felt her memories, her loneliness. Aboard sterile ships, her first glimpse of Earth's atmosphere, so wild and blue it made her weep. He felt her fascination with human art, the way she trembled the first time she heard Chopin, how she begged to be assigned to the vessel nearest to the battlefield, just to understand us better, and how, when they found Mason's body, still barely clinging to life, she fought protocol to bring him back. Mason gasped as the wave subsided, tears blurring his vision. You shared all of that. Yes, she breathed. Now you carry part of me. It is the Illyrian way. He reached for her waist, tentative, reverent. The moment their skin touched without barriers, her eyes flared brighter than the station's lights. Her body arched not in surprise, but in surrender. You shouldn't, she began. I should, Mason growled softly, drawing her lower until their bodies met fully, heat to heat. We're past the edge now. The chamber shimmered around, them reacting to their merging energies. Not just passion, a bond forming fast, fierce, inexplicable. Alien nurse erotica had never prepared him for this. A moment where desire was laced with trust so deep. It broke protocol. She cried out, softly, when his lips found the place just beneath her jaw, where her pulse beat like stardust. He was weak, still healing, but with each breath, each movement, he felt more alive than he ever had in uniform. This isn't just healing, he said between kisses. This is rebirth. Selenia nodded against him, breath ragged. You are no longer just a sacrificed hero. You are becoming something more, and so am I. A tremor ran through them as a wave of energy burst outward from their entwined bodies filling the chamber with aurora-like colors. Somewhere deep within the station's systems, silent monitors blinked, readings surged, bonds forged. Mason held her as her body melted into his, fluid and light and need. He felt her strength in his veins. Now her alien grace interlaced with his raw human fire. Their species had warred, fought over territory, instinct, misunderstanding, but here, within the sacred stillness of this sanctuary, an intergalactic love story was being written, not in treaties or declarations, but in shared skin and emotion. Sweat and soul. I don't want this to end, he whispered into her neck. Then don't let it, she answered. Stay, become something that proves peace can bloom where war once burned. A soldier who was meant to die had instead become a symbol of something Earth never expected: connection, and deep within a starlit room, where enemies once stood, divided, a power reversal romance unfolded breathlessly where an alien nurse didn't just save the hero, she chose him. The station had grown quieter in the hours after. Not silent. Nothing in space was truly silent, but reverent. As if the walls, once built for war briefings and casualty logs, now held their breath for something older, more sacred. Mason sat up slowly, every nerve newly tuned. Selenia hovered near, her movements more hesitant now, as if she wasn't sure what to be: nurse, lover, witness. Tell me what comes next, Mason asked, voice hoarse from use and something more tender. Her luminous eyes blinked slowly. Then she reached for a data panel and cast it into the air like a sheet of starlight. Holograms flickered to life, a galactic map, roots, blinking red borders. Your active sacrifice caused fractures across the quadrant. Some of our species are calling for full withdrawal. Others demand answers. Answers, Mason said bitterly. We sent our best men and women to die rather than fire a single shot. What more could we give? Selenia turned. You gave us a story. That's the most dangerous weapon in any galaxy. He blinked. You mean our elders see you now as something mythic? The sacrificed hero, the one who died for light. They fear what that means. Others want to worship it, but no one can ignore it. He let that sink in. So I'm, what? A relic? A political symbol? You are alive, she said fiercely, moving closer, and that terrifies them most of all. There was something hot beneath her serenity. Not rage, not calculation. Emotion. That was what separated humans from machines, maybe now from Illyrian leadership. Selenia knelt at the edge of the bed, her hand resting on his thigh, fingers gentle but gripping. You changed me, she whispered. I was trained to touch without feeling, to heal without craving. But now I ache to feel you even when you're whole. That's not protocol, it's human. Mason reached for her cheek. Then let's break the protocol again. She kissed him, not cautiously, not as healer to patient, but as a woman who had tasted emotion and refused to be caged by her own biology. And when she pulled him into her arms, he didn't resist, he reached back, flipping her beneath him as instinct overruled injury. Their bodies locked together with a need more explosive than any fusion drive. Selenia gasped as he pressed her against the soft, floating energy field bed. You're not supposed to be this strong already. Maybe it's the salve, he teased, lips on her collarbone. Or maybe it's the power of intergalactic love stories. She laughed raw, unguarded. It made his chest ache in ways war never could. And then she moaned, softly, when his fingers found the lines along her waist where nerves met light. She arched against him, breathless. You humans burn. We do, he whispered into her ear. And now you know why we fight, why we love, why we'd rather die than live without meaning. Each motion between them echoed that truth. No longer just human-alien romance, this was union with purpose. He worshipped her with his hands, his lips, his words. She wrapped around him not as caretaker, but equal. Her glowing skin clashed and melted into his, friction and fluorescence. Dancing in the air. Their rhythm was war rewritten as intimacy, command rewritten as surrender. It was the most sensual part of any alien nurse, erotica fantasy. But it wasn't fiction, it was real. And it was rewriting both their fates in real time. When they collapsed into each other, breathless, hearts hammering, Mason whispered, "What now?" Selenia nestled into his side, voice like stardust on a solar wind, replied, "Now, we risk everything." Mason's eyes opened. "Explain." "I've linked you," she said. "Biologically, spiritually, they'll sense it. The Council forbids such connections. We are not meant to bond with those we heal, especially not with humans. It disrupts the code of purity." "Purity," Mason echoed, disgusted. "We kissed beneath an explosion." "I think we're way past that." Selenia nodded. "But they won't care. They will see it as contamination. You are the embodiment of a power reversal romance that threatens their control. You became something they couldn't predict. So what do we do?" he asked. She looked him in the eye, fierce and unflinching. "We run, not to escape, but to show them what this connection really is. We give them the proof that peace doesn't come from treaties, but from the courage to be changed." He stared at her, not a nurse, not an alien, but a woman who saw the worst of humanity and still chose to touch it. He kissed her again, gently this time. "Then we run, together." And somewhere, outside the shielded hull of their sanctuary, stars shifted course, because two species, once on the brink of annihilation, were now tethered by something no weapon could extinguish: love. The escape wasn't cinematic. No alarms, no chasers, just a quiet betrayal of expectation. Selenia deactivated the internal logs. Mason slid into a stealth suit lined with nanoweave and Alarian thermoshields. Their hands found each other before the launch, fingers gripping, like they feared the universe might yank them apart mid-flight. The pod hummed softly. An old diplomatic vessel from an era before war erased peace from the diplomatic lexicon. It drifted out of the sanctuary dock like a whisper through starlight. No one fired, no one stopped them, but they weren't free. They were fugitives in a galaxy still healing, still learning how to forgive. Hours passed. maybe days. The stars no longer blurred, they just watched. Mason floated near Selenia in the small cabin, their legs brushing, breaths sinking. The Illyrian tech kept the temperature perfect, but it did nothing for the ache building between them again. This wasn't lust, it was need, and it pulsed stronger than gravity. "You're sure this safe zone exists?" Mason asked, brushing his hand over her thigh. Her body reacted, those delicate lights along her skin flaring softly, an outer ring of the old harmony accord. She murmured, eyes half-lidded. "Illyrian rebels, scientists, outcasts, some still believe in integration. They may shelter us." He nodded slowly, then ran a finger along her jaw. "What happens if they don't?" Selenia's eyes met his, heat blooming in their depths. "Then we keep running, until there's nowhere left but each other." Mason kissed her slow this time, grounded. She climbed into his lap, like weight meant nothing. His hands pulled at the fabric of her tunic, fingers trembling not from fear, but reverence. Every time they touched, it felt like a prayer answered in secret. He was the soldier who'd burned for peace, and now he was being made whole by the one sent to collect his ashes. Her glow intensified as she straddled him. Their bodies connected, slick with breath and heartbeat, no barriers left to pull down. She gasped when he gripped her hips, when he thrust up into her not roughly, but like he wanted to remind her she wasn't the only one who could give. This was a new kind of HFY Sci-Fi Erotica, one built on shared strength, on the idea that a human didn't have to dominate to be powerful and an alien didn't have to submit to be desired. They met in the middle, gasping, moaning, whimpering into each other's mouths. Selenia dragged her nails down his back, and the suit responded by peeling itself away, baring skin for skin. "Your heat," she whispered. "You burn everywhere." "And you," he groaned, kissing her shoulder. "You melt me." Their climax wasn't explosive, it was like stars collapsing into each other, forming something heavier, denser, real. And when it was over, when the echoes of their bodies stopped reverberating in the small pod, they lay tangled, quiet, floating in each other's breath. "Is this love?" Selenia asked, softly. Mason hesitated, not because he doubted, but because it felt too soon to speak something so sacred out loud. "I don't know what else to call it," he finally said, "but if it is, then it's the most human thing I've ever done." She smiled against his chest, whispering, "Then I am no longer just a They drifted that way for what felt like an eternity till the pod jolted. Selenia sat up, skin pulsing with warning light blue. "We're being scanned." Mason grabbed his side armor relic. "But functional yours." "No, not mine," she said slowly, "but not hostile either." "They're broadcasting." She tapped the control panel. A voice broke through, filtered through layers of static, to the human who gave his fire, and the Illyrian who dared to hold it. "We welcome you." Mason's eyes met hers. They'd made it. They landed on a drifting station cobbled together from Earth tech, Illyrian bioskin, and 1,000 promises left unkept. It wasn't beautiful, but it was real, and it was theirs. Scientists, hybrids, defectors, stared as Mason stepped onto the platform. A human soldier once programmed to destroy, and beside him, glowing like a star given form, Selenia walked hand in hand with him. One of the rebels stepped forward. "You bring danger here." Mason didn't flinch. "I bring proof." He looked at Selenia. She nodded. And then Mason did the unthinkable. He dropped to one knee and pressed his forehead to hers. publicly linking with her in the way only bonded Illyrian mates could. A gesture of unity. The onlookers gasped. Some cried. One knelt. This was no longer just a human-alien romance. It was revolution, dressed in the skin of a love story. The Harmony Outpost became their home not by design, but by necessity. It was a place where castaways of two galaxies gathered not to mourn the war, but to imagine what might rise from its ashes. Mason and Selenia weren't just symbols here, they were proof that when Earth sent light instead of war, someone out there was watching. Someone answered, but peace, Mason learned, was its own kind of battlefield. Not everyone at the outpost accepted him. Some Illyrian factions called Selenia a traitor, a defiler, a nurse who had broken the sacred oath of separation. They whispered, alien nurse erotica, as if it was sin wrapped in silk, as if the pleasure they shared desecrated something ancient. And yet, none could deny the bond. Her light pulsed brighter when he entered a room. His strength returned tenfold under her touch. The scans confirmed its cells entwined. Neural echoes sync. It was no longer metaphor. They were bonded at the molecular level, and it terrified the old systems. But love doesn't ask for permission. One evening, beneath a cracked dome where Earth's moon reflected across the outpost's artificial sea, Mason pulled Selenia into his arms and held her like he'd never known softness before war. I can't stop thinking about what we are, he whispered. So, Lenya, cradling his face in those luminous fingers, replied, we're a beginning. That's always the most fragile thing in any galaxy. He kissed her then, not for lust, not for healing, just because she existed. Because she chose him again, every cycle, in a universe that had always tried to dictate otherwise. It wasn't just a power reversal romance, it was defiance wrapped in tenderness, and it was theirs. That night, he made love to her slowly, reverently, as if he could memorize her soul through each breath. They lay together tangled in sheets made from atmospheric silk, glowing faintly in the dark like a constellation of skin and heartbeat. It wasn't eroticism anymore, it was belonging. I used to think I died in that explosion, Mason murmured. But maybe I was born. She smiled softly, curling into his chest. And I used to believe I wasn't built to feel, but you gave me chaos, and I loved it. But peace, as always, couldn't last. 3 days later, the council came, not with weapons but with words sharp enough to kill. A delegation arrived through Wormgate, their robes shimmering with status, their faces unreadable beneath ceremonial veils. They demanded Selenia stand trial for violating the directive of genetic isolation, for merging with a species deemed psychologically unstable. They called Mason an echo of sacrifice, contaminated by passion. He stood before them, bare-chested and unafraid. I was a weapon once, he said calmly. You're scared because I chose not to be. Selenia took his hand, and I was a machine of mercy. Now I choose love. The council didn't blink. Then you shall both be exiled beyond our borders. You will not carry this infection of feeling to others. Mason stepped forward. You think this is infection? It's evolution. He turned. To the crowd of rebels, we are not the monsters of your war stories. We are what comes next. You want proof? Look around. One by one, hybrids stepped forward, quietly brave, children born of mixed genes, nurses with human partners, scientists who no longer feared kissing across species. This wasn't scandal, it was revolution. And so the council turned and left, not defeated, but dethroned. And what rose in their absence was something that galaxy hadn't seen in millennia. Choice. That night, Mason and Selenia stood at the edge of the outpost garden, beneath the canopy of reconstructed stars. "You still think this is a dream?" she asked. "No," he said. "Dreams end. This feels like the start of a myth." They held each other, and across the galaxy something shifted. Earth, once known for war, had given birth to something more potent. Not fear, not dominance, but story. And in that story, a sacrificed hero met the nurse meant to heal him, and instead, she fell in love. Together, they lit a path that even the stars hadn't dared to walk, and in doing so, they proved the most profound truth of all, that sometimes the bravest thing to beings from opposite worlds can do is choose each other and never let go.